She mistook a Mafia boss for the IT guy resetting her laptop, but that mistake changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Let's dive into the story. It was a typical Tuesday afternoon when Olivia sat down at her usual corner in the bustling cafe. Her laptop screen blinked, an ominous sign that her device was about to crash. With a deep sigh, she reached for her coffee, hoping for some miracle that would make her day a little bit easier. Olivia was a freelance graphic designer, working tirelessly to meet deadlines while trying to manage her chaotic schedule. Her apartment was a cozy mess of paint splatters, empty coffee cups, and scattered sketches. She was used to the clutter, though just part of the process. What wasn't part of the plan was her laptop refusing to cooperate. As she clicked on the keyboard in a frustrated frenzy, a man in a simple t-shirt and jeans walked into the cafe. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and he carried a calm yet confident air around him. Olivia barely looked up as he approached the counter, ordering a drink before taking a seat at a nearby table. The man's presence, though, was undeniable. He was someone you couldn't ignore. Her laptop blinked again, a louder warning this time, signaling the impending disaster. Olivia panicked. She had a major project due in just a few hours, and the thought of losing her work sent a wave of dread through her. In her desperation, she glanced around, looking for someone who might help. That's when she noticed him. He was fiddling with his phone, seemingly unaware of his surroundings. Maybe he knew something about tech. Maybe he could fix her laptop. She stood up, walking over to his table. "Excuse me, do you know anything about computers? My laptop is going crazy, and I really need to get this fixed." The man looked up, a little surprised, his eyes flicking to her screen. He didn't immediately respond, just paused for a second, then gave a small smile. "I might be able to help," he said in a low voice, sliding his chair back. Olivia, relieved, quickly slid into the seat across from him, her hands fidgeting in her lap. She explained the problem, pointing to the blinking screen, feeling more than a little embarrassed that her computer had gotten the best of her. He took a look at the laptop, his fingers working with surprising skill as he typed in commands and navigated through the system. His quiet confidence was reassuring, and for the first time in hours, Olivia felt a little less stressed. After a few minutes, he sat back, satisfied. "All done," he said with a soft smile. "It should be good now." Olivia couldn't believe it. Her laptop was working again. "Thank you so much," she exclaimed, relief flooding her body. She paused for a moment, noticing the way he looked at her, his dark eyes sharp, yet somehow soft. "No problem," he replied. But just as she was about to thank him again, she glanced at his attire and realized something. This man wasn't just another cafe-goer. He didn't look like the typical tech guy. His casual clothes, although neat, weren't quite what she expected someone who worked in IT to wear. Was he really who he said he was? Was she just overthinking things? "So, what do, if you don't mind me asking?" she ventured, curiosity getting the better of her. He paused for a moment, as if weighing his answer. "I work in tech," he said simply, keeping things vague. Olivia nodded, still unsure of his true identity. She didn't have time to dwell on it, though her laptop was fixed, and that was all that mattered. She smiled and stood up, ready to get back to work. "Well, thank you again. You saved me today," she said, gathering her things. He gave a slight nod, his lips curling into a small smile. "Glad I could help." As Olivia walked away, her mind raced. She hadn't even asked his name. Maybe it didn't matter. She was on a deadline. But that feeling something about him kept nagging at her. Little did she know, her mistake in thinking he was just an IT guy was about to turn her life upside down in ways she could never have imagined. It had been a week since Olivia met the mysterious man at the cafe, and she couldn't stop thinking about him. Her laptop was working perfectly, and her design project was finally on track. But something about that brief encounter lingered in her mind, like a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. The way he had helped her so effortlessly, the quiet confidence he exuded, and the strange feeling that he was hiding something. Olivia shook her head, telling herself it didn't matter. She had deadlines to meet, and worrying about some guy she met by chance wasn't going to help her finish her work. But then, one evening, she received an invitation that would change everything. It was an email from an unfamiliar address, but the subject line caught her attention: an invitation to the charity gala. The message was brief, but to the point: "We would like to invite you to our annual charity gala. Please join us for an evening of elegance and goodwill. Dress code: formal, RSVP required." Olivia stared at the screen, wondering why she was getting this invitation. She wasn't part of any high society or charitable organizations. She shrugged and moved on, thinking it was a mistake. But later that evening, as she was about to shut down her computer, the notification popped up again this time. It was a personal message from the same email address. "Olivia, I hope you can join us. You were on my mind after our last encounter, Jay." The name Jay sent a shiver down her spine. Could it be him? The man from the cafe? The one who had helped her? Her heart raced as she clicked the reply button. "Who is this?" she typed, feeling a mix of curiosity and doubt. The reply came almost instantly. "It's him, Olivia. I was the one who fixed your laptop." Olivia's fingers hovered over the keyboard. The mystery man had found her. Why? What did he want from her? She hesitated, but then her curiosity got the better of her. She typed, "Why did you help me?" The response was simple, yet it left her questioning everything. "Because I wanted to, and maybe I wanted to see you again." It wasn't much to go on, but it was enough to spark a flood of questions in Olivia's mind. She wasn't sure whether to be flattered or scared. After all, she barely knew this man, and yet he seemed to know a lot about her. Despite the uncertainty, Olivia decided to go to the gala. She wanted answers, and this seemed like the only way to get them. The night of the event arrived, and Olivia stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her dress. It was a simple black dress, nothing too fancy, but she had never been to a charity gala before, and she wasn't sure what to expect. Her heart pounded as she imagined what it would be like to face the man again. Was he truly who he said he was? Or was there something more to him than she realized? She gathered her things, took a deep breath, and left her apartment. When Olivia arrived at the gala, she was immediately struck by the contrast between the elegant venue and her own simple attire. The grand chandelier hung overhead, casting a warm glow over the marble floors. Guests in tuxedos and gowns moved gracefully through the room, laughing and sipping champagne. Olivia felt out of place, but she reminded herself that she was here for one reason: to find out who the man really was. As she scanned the room, she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned around and was immediately met with a pair of piercing blue eyes. It was him, the man from the cafe. But now he was wearing a perfectly tailored suit, his hair styled impeccably, and his presence was commanding. Olivia froze. He was even more striking than she remembered. His smile was calm, but there was something undeniably intense about him. "Olivia," he said, his voice low and smooth, "I'm glad you could make it." Olivia tried to hide the shock in her expression, but it was impossible. You're, she stammered. "Yes," he interrupted gently, his gaze never leaving hers. "I'm not just the IT guy you met at the cafe. I'm Julian Cormack, and I wanted to get to know you better." Olivia's mind raced. Julian Cormack. The name sounded familiar. Wasn't he the CEO of some major company? But why was he at a gala like this, and why did he go to such lengths to help her? "I don't understand," Olivia said, still trying to process the information. Julian smiled softly. "I didn't want to reveal myself too soon. I wanted to see if you would like me for who I am, not for my title or my money." Olivia couldn't help but feel a twinge of admiration for him. It wasn't often that someone with such wealth and power would go out of their way to meet someone like her. But still, there was something that didn't sit right with her. Why had he been so secretive? What was his true motive? Julian seemed to sense her hesitation. "I know this is a lot to take in," he said, his tone more serious now. "But I'm not here to pressure you. I just want to spend time with you. No strings attached. If you're interested." Olivia was torn. On one hand, she was curious about this mysterious man and the world he seemed to inhabit. On the other hand, she didn't want to be swept up in a relationship that was based on lies. She had to decide whether to trust him or walk away. But for now, all she could do was wait and see where this unexpected encounter would lead. The evening at the gala was a blur of flashing lights and the hum of quiet conversations. Olivia stood beside Julian, still trying to process the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. It felt surreal to be standing next to a man who was, only a few days ago, a stranger she met at a cafe. Now, here he was, not just a regular guy, but Julian Cormack, the CEO of one of the most successful tech companies in the country. She had always imagined that the world of billionaires was far removed from hers. Yet somehow, fate had pulled her into it. As they stood there, Julian casually handed her a glass of champagne, and Olivia took a sip, trying to steady her nerves. She was struggling to come to terms with the fact that the man she thought was just a tech guy, someone she would probably never see again, was now standing right in front of her, offering an entirely different version of himself. "So, what do you do, Olivia?" Julian asked, his voice smooth as he leaned slightly toward her, his gaze unwavering. Olivia felt a lump form in her throat. Was she supposed to tell him about her struggles, her freelance work that barely paid the bills, her dreams of owning her own design studio? She quickly swallowed, trying to keep things light. "I'm a graphic designer," she said, her voice steady. "I work for myself, mostly on freelance projects. It's a bit unpredictable, but it pays the bills." Julian raised an eyebrow. "I admire that," he said, his tone genuine. "It takes a lot of courage to go out on your own like that. I'm sure it's not easy." Olivia couldn't help but feel a slight blush rise on her cheeks. She hadn't expected him to say that. For a moment, they stood in silence, the world of high society swirling around them, but she felt strangely at ease with him. She wondered, though, how much of this conversation was genuine, and how much was just him being the smooth-talking CEO that he was. Her mind drifted back to the email he had sent her, how he had so easily invited her to this event, how he had casually dropped his true identity. She was still unsure of his intentions. What did he want from her? As if reading her mind, Julian spoke again, his voice quieter now. "Olivia, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I know this whole situation might be a lot to take in, and I understand if you're feeling skeptical. But I really wanted to meet you again." Olivia's eyes met his, searching for any hint of dishonesty. "Why me?" she asked, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "Why go to all this trouble?" Julian's smile faltered for just a second before he recovered. "Because," he began slowly, "I saw something in you that I don't often see in the people I meet. You're real, genuine, and, if I'm being honest, I've been a little intrigued." Olivia felt a flutter in her stomach at his words. He was being so open, so unlike the typical CEO she had read about in tabloids, but that didn't answer her question. "But why the secrecy? Why not just tell me who you were from the start?" Julian paused, as if weighing his words carefully. "I wanted to see if we could connect without the labels, without my name or my wealth getting in the way. I wanted to meet Olivia, the person, not Olivia, the graphic designer." She was taken aback by his answer. It was a lot to process, especially coming from someone like him, but the sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. Olivia had been around long enough to recognize when someone was being genuine, and for some reason, Julian's words felt real. Still, she couldn't shake the doubt lingering in her mind. "And what happens now?" she asked, her voice steady but unsure. Julian looked around the room, his gaze softening as he turned back to her. "Now we enjoy the evening. No pressure. Just two people getting to know each other." Olivia hesitated for a moment, the weight of his words settling over her. She had come here tonight seeking answers, and while Julian's words were reassuring, they also raised even more questions. But one thing was clear. This night wasn't going to end like she had expected. As the night went on, Olivia found herself growing more comfortable with Julian, despite the doubts that still lingered. They talked about everything: her work, his company, their mutual love for art, and even the randomness of how they had met. There was no pressure, no expectations. Just two people connecting in the most unexpected way. As the evening drew to a close, Julian turned to her, his expression serious but gentle. "Olivia, I know you probably have a lot on your mind, but I'd like to see you again. Would you be open to that?" Olivia paused, feeling the weight of the moment. She had come here expecting answers, but now she was left with more questions. Yet, despite the uncertainty, there was something about Julian that felt different. Maybe it was his honesty, or maybe it was the way he looked at her, like she was more than just another person in his world. She nodded slowly. "I'd like that," she said quietly, her heart racing. Julian's smile was warm and genuine, and for the first time that evening, Olivia felt like she had made the right choice. But little did she know, their story was just beginning, and the mysteries of Julian's life were far from over. The days following the gala passed by in a whirlwind. Olivia had agreed to see Julian again, but she couldn't shake the unease that still lingered. Their connection felt real, but there was always a part of her that questioned his true intentions. Was he really as genuine as he appeared? Or was there more to him than he had let on? Despite her reservations, Olivia found herself drawn to him. They had gone out several times since the gala dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant, a visit to an art exhibit, even a walk through a park on a crisp Sunday afternoon. Each time, she learned something new about Julian. He was not just a billionaire CEO, but someone with passions, interests, and a surprisingly humble side. He had an unshakable confidence, but there was a vulnerability to him too, one that he only revealed in small glimpses. But Olivia couldn't help but wonder why he had chosen her. She wasn't wealthy, she wasn't part of his world. And yet, here she was, becoming a constant in his life. It wasn't long before she noticed the subtle changes in their dynamic. Julian began to open up more, sharing details of his life, his business, and his complicated relationship with his family. Olivia could see the strain in his eyes when he spoke of his father, a powerful man in his own right, whose approval he had never seemed to earn. Julian had spent his entire life trying to prove himself, not just to his father, but to the world. Olivia began to see the cracks in the perfect exterior. Yet, there were still moments when Julian's true nature remained a mystery. The deeper they got into their relationship, the more Olivia felt like there were things he wasn't saying. The wall he had carefully built around his past was starting to show signs of wear. One evening, they sat in the cozy corner of a new restaurant Julian had picked out, the flickering candlelight casting shadows on their faces. Olivia couldn't help but feel like this was a moment she had been waiting for, a moment when everything would finally make sense. "Julian, I've been thinking," Olivia said, her voice soft. "About us." Julian looked up from his plate, his brow furrowing slightly. "What about us?" he asked, his tone cautious. "I don't know," Olivia said, hesitating for a moment. "I just feel like there's something you're not telling me. Something about your life. About who you really are." Julian's expression shifted, and for a moment, Olivia thought he might retreat, as he so often did when it came to his past. But instead, he put down his fork and leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. "You're right," he said quietly. "There is something I haven't told you. But it's not something I'm proud of, and I'm not sure if I'm ready to share it yet." Olivia's heart raced. She had suspected there was more to his story, but hearing him admit, it made her uneasy. "Julian, I just want to understand. I'm not judging you, but I can't keep going like this, feeling like there's something I'm missing." Julian sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I get it. I really do. And I'm sorry for not being open with you. But the truth is, I've spent my life hiding parts of myself. Hiding from my family. From the world. My father," he trailed off, his voice dropping low. "He's a dangerous man, Olivia, and I've been trying to distance myself from him for years, but he always seems to pull me back in." Olivia was taken aback. She hadn't expected this. A Mafia connection? Julian, the man she had come to care for, was somehow involved in that world? "Are you telling me you're—" she started, her voice faltering. Julian shook his head, his expression firm. "No, I'm not like him. I don't want that life. But I've been caught in his web for years. I've had to make choices, hard choices, just to survive in his world. But I don't want that anymore. I want a different life, a life with you." Olivia took a deep breath, trying to process everything he had just said. This was not what she had imagined. But there was a sincerity in his voice that made her hesitate before jumping to conclusions. "Julian, I don't know what to say," she admitted. "This is a lot to take in." He reached across the table, taking her hand gently in his. I know, and I'm sorry for not telling you sooner, but I needed you to know the truth. You deserve to know who I really am, all of me. Olivia looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of dishonesty. What she saw there was raw, vulnerable honesty. For the first time, Julian wasn't the untouchable CEO, but a man who had been shaped by his past, trying to carve out a future. I don't know if I'm ready for this, Olivia said quietly, but I want to try. I want to understand you. Julian gave her a small smile, relief washing over his face. Thank you, he whispered. That's all I'm asking for. In that moment, Olivia realized that this relationship wasn't going to be easy, but maybe, just maybe, it was worth fighting for. She didn't know where it would lead, but she was willing to find out. And as they sat there, hands entwined, she felt a new sense of hope. Perhaps the hardest part of any relationship was not the secrets, but the willingness to face them together. The following weeks were a turning point for Olivia and Julian. The truth about his past weighed heavily on both of them, but as time passed, they found a rhythm in their relationship that made it feel like things were moving forward, even if the road ahead wasn't clear. Julian's vulnerability had opened up a new level of honesty between them, and for the first time, Olivia felt like she truly understood the man behind the polished CEO exterior. They spent more time together, and Olivia found herself thinking about him constantly. She could no longer deny the growing feelings she had for him, even as the doubts and fears about his past remained. It wasn't easy for Olivia to reconcile the man she knew with the dangerous world he had been a part of, but Julian had shown her that there was more to him than his family's legacy. Slowly, she allowed herself to believe that he was trying to leave that life behind. Julian, on the other hand, was more determined than ever to make a clean break from his past. Every conversation they had about his father, about the Mafia connections that seemed to follow him wherever he went, made him more resolute. He didn't want to be that man anymore, the one who lived in the shadows, constantly looking over his shoulder. He wanted to be the man standing beside Olivia, the one she could trust, the one who could offer her a future without the darkness that had once defined him. But old habits die hard, and the world Julian had tried so hard to escape was never far behind. One afternoon, while Olivia was working on a new design project, she received an unexpected phone call. She recognized the number immediately. It was Julian, but when she answered, it wasn't his voice that greeted her. Instead, it was a man's voice, rough and familiar. Olivia, we need to talk. Her heart skipped a beat. Who is this? She asked, her voice trembling. It's your boyfriend's father, the voice said, cold and commanding. And I suggest you stay away from him. He's in too deep, and you don't want to get caught in the crossfire. Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. She dropped the phone, her mind racing. She had known Julian's family was complicated, but she had never imagined it was this bad. She had always suspected there was more to his past than he had let on, but hearing it from his father's mouth made everything feel too real. Olivia stood there, staring at the phone in her hand, trying to make sense of what had just happened. She didn't want to believe it, but the warning was clear. She wasn't safe, and neither was Julian. She needed to talk to him, to understand what was going on, but at the same time, she didn't want to drag him back into that dangerous world. She was torn, unsure of what to do. She decided to confront him. Later that evening, Julian came over to her apartment, his usual calm demeanor replaced with a tension she hadn't seen before. "What's going on, Julian?" Olivia asked as soon as he stepped inside. She could see the strain in his eyes, the way his jaw clenched, as if he was holding back something important. He took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair. "I got the call," he said quietly. "I knew it was only a matter of time before they came for me." Olivia's heart sank. She could feel the weight of his words, the heaviness in his voice. "Who called you?" she asked, afraid of the answer. Julian hesitated before answering, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her stomach churn. "My father," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He's not happy that I've been distancing myself from the family business, and now he's warning me, and you." Olivia's mind raced. She had known this day might come, but hearing Julian confirm, it was like a punch to the gut. "What does that mean, Julian? What does he want from you?" Julian let out a bitter laugh, but it was hollow, devoid of any humor. He wants me to take over the business, Olivia. He's been grooming me for years to take his place. But I fought him every step of the way. Now, he's trying to pull me back in, and he's using you to do it. Olivia felt the air in the room grow thick, heavy with the implications of his words. She had no idea how deep this went, how much of Julian's life had been shaped by his father's expectations and manipulations. "What are we going to do?" Olivia asked, her voice trembling. Julian stepped closer to her, taking her hands in his. "I'm not going back, Olivia. I won't. But I need you to understand that this won't be easy. There will be consequences. My father doesn't take kindly to defiance." Olivia nodded, her heart aching for him. She could see the internal battle raging inside him, the pull of his past life and the desire to protect her from it. "We'll figure this out," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions brewing inside her. "Together." Julian smiled, a small, sad smile. "Together," he repeated, the weight of his words settling between them. As they stood there, hands intertwined, Olivia realized that the future she had imagined for them was no longer as simple as it once seemed. But one thing was certain: she wasn't going to let Julian face this alone. She had already fallen for him, and now they would face whatever came next, side by side. The next few days were a blur for Olivia. After her conversation with Julian, she couldn't shake the gravity of the situation. His father's warning still echoed in her mind, and the weight of what Julian had said about the family business felt like a constant pressure on her chest. She knew this wasn't just about Julian's past anymore, it was about both of their futures, and the choices they would have to make. Julian was determined to distance himself from his father's world, but it wasn't going to be easy. The Mafia didn't let go of its own, and Olivia could sense that this was only the beginning of a much darker struggle. As she sat at her desk, working on another design, her thoughts kept drifting back to Julian. She couldn't deny how much she cared for him, how deeply she had fallen in love with him despite all the complications. But the reality of his past, his connection to the Mafia, his father's expectations loomed over them like a shadow. Olivia couldn't help but wonder if she was ready to be part of that world, even if Julian wanted nothing to do with it. She had already told him she would stand by him, but what would that really mean? She hadn't known what she was getting into when she first agreed to go on a date with him, and now everything had changed. She was no longer just a graphic designer trying to make it on her own. She was involved in something far more dangerous, far more complicated. As Olivia sat there, contemplating all of this, her phone rang, pulling her from her thoughts. She recognized the number immediately. It was Julian. She answered quickly, her heart pounding in her chest. "Julian?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Olivia," he replied, his voice tense. "We need to talk." She could hear the urgency in his tone. "What's wrong?" she asked, her stomach tightening. "It's my father," Julian said, his words clipped. "He's made it clear that he won't let me walk away. He's sending someone to keep an eye on me, and I need you to be careful. Things are about to get complicated, and I don't want you getting caught in the middle." Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. She had known this was coming, but hearing the seriousness in Julian's voice made it all too real. "What do you mean, someone's going to keep an eye on you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He has people, Olivia," Julian said, his voice grim. "People who watch my every move, make sure I stay in line. And now, they're going to be watching you too." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. This was worse than she had imagined. She had always known Julian's past was dangerous, but hearing it from him, hearing him admit it so openly, was a wake-up call. "Julian, I don't want this," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't want to be part of this world. I just want to be with you, without all the chaos and danger." Julian was silent for a moment, and Olivia could feel the weight of his words hanging between them. "I know," he finally said, his voice soft. "I don't want this for you either, but my father won't let me go that easily. He'll stop at nothing to pull me back into his world. I need to protect you, Olivia, and I need you to stay safe, no matter what." Olivia closed her eyes, taking a deep breath as she processed what he had said. She had never imagined her life would take this turn. She had always dreamed of a simple, peaceful future, one where she could focus on her art and her career. But now, that dream seemed so far out of reach. "What are we going to do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Julian paused, then spoke with more determination than she had ever heard from him. I'm going to handle this. I won't let anything happen to you. But I need you to trust me. I need you to be strong for both of us. Olivia felt tears sting her eyes. She had never wanted to be part of a world like this, but now she was caught in the middle of it, and there was no turning back. She had fallen in love with Julian, and now she had to decide if she was willing to face the consequences of that love. I trust you, she said quietly. Her voice steady, despite the fear that gripped her heart. But Julian, promise me you won't do anything reckless. Promise me you'll be careful. Julian's voice softened, and she could hear the sincerity in his words. I promise, Olivia, I won't let anything happen to us. I'll make sure of it. They ended the call soon after, but Olivia couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in her chest. She had made a promise to stand by Julian, but she wasn't sure how much longer she could live in the shadow of his past. As she sat in her apartment that night, staring out the window, she realized that no matter what happened next, her life would never be the same. But one thing was certain, she was in this for the long haul. She had already chosen Julian, and now they would face whatever came next, together. The days that followed Julian's warning felt like a waiting game, a constant anxiety hanging over Olivia's head. She couldn't help but replay their conversation over and over in her mind. Julian's father had made it clear that he wasn't going to let go of his son so easily, and now they both had to live with the consequences. Olivia tried to focus on her work, but it was hard to concentrate with the knowledge that Julian's past was catching up to them. Despite her fears, she couldn't stop thinking about him. The moments they had shared, the way he had opened up to her, trusting her with his darkest secrets, it all felt so real. She wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't walk away from him. She had already fallen in love with him, and no matter how complicated things got, she was committed to him. On the other hand, Julian was becoming more distant. He wasn't the same confident man she had met at the cafe anymore. The pressure from his father, the constant threat of being pulled back into the family business, it was weighing on him. Olivia could see it in his eyes. He was torn between his love for her and his loyalty to his family, a loyalty that had been drilled into him for his entire life. But every time he looked at her, Olivia knew he wanted more. He wanted to build a life with her, free from the shadows of his past. One night, as they sat in a quiet cafe, Julian finally spoke up. Olivia, I've been thinking, he began, his voice low and serious. I don't want you to be a part of this world. You deserve better than all of this. You deserve peace, happiness, and a future without fear. Olivia's heart clenched at his words. Julian, I don't care about your past, she said. Her voice steady but filled with emotion. I care about you, all of you, and I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure this out together. Julian's eyes softened as he reached for her hand, his thumb brushing over her skin. I don't want to drag you into this, Olivia. I can't promise that everything will be okay, that my past won't catch up to us, but I'll do everything I can to protect you. Olivia squeezed his hand, feeling the weight of his words. She knew he was scared, knew he was trying to shield her from the dangers that lurked in his world, but she wasn't afraid. She had never been afraid of him, even when he had been hiding the truth. And now that she knew everything, now that he had trusted her with his darkest secret, she wasn't about to turn her back on him. We're in this together, Julian, she said, her voice soft but resolute. Whatever happens, we'll face it side by side. I'm not going anywhere. Julian's expression softened, and for the first time in days, he smiled. It wasn't a smile that hid his worries or his fears, but a smile that acknowledged what they had, the connection they shared. You're right, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We'll face it together. The next few days were tense. Julian was taking extra precautions, keeping an eye out for anyone who might be watching him, or worse, watching Olivia. He didn't want to drag her further into the mess that his family had created, but it was hard to keep her out of it when she was already so deeply involved. Olivia could see the toll it was taking on him. The man she had fallen in love with, the one who had been so strong and confident, was now walking on eggshells, constantly looking over his shoulder. And it hurt her to see him like this, to know that his father's influence still had such a hold on him. But she wasn't going to let him face this alone. One evening, after dinner, Julian looked at her with an intensity that made her heart race. Olivia, he said, his voice quiet but full of emotion. "There's something I need to do. I need to make sure this is all over. I can't keep running from it. And I can't keep you in the dark." Olivia frowned, concern immediately flooding her chest. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice laced with worry. Julian took a deep breath, as if preparing himself for what he was about to say. "I'm going to confront my father. I need to end this. I need to take control of my life. And I need to do it for you, for us." Olivia's stomach twisted at the thought. She didn't want him to put himself in danger, but she knew this was something he had to do. He couldn't keep running forever. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Julian nodded, determination in his eyes. "I've made my decision. This has to end." She wanted to stop him, to tell him to walk away from it all, to leave the past behind. But she knew he couldn't, not until he faced it. And as much as she hated the idea of him confronting his father, Olivia understood. He was doing this for himself, for their future. "Then I'm with you," she said softly, her voice filled with unwavering support. Julian's eyes softened, and he pulled her into an embrace. For a moment they just held each other, the weight of the world outside forgotten. But they both knew that the path ahead would be difficult, that the confrontation with Julian's father was inevitable. And as much as they had tried to shield themselves from it, it was time to face the truth. Together. The days leading up to Julian's confrontation with his father were filled with tension. Olivia could feel the weight of the decision hanging over them both, and no matter how many times Julian assured her that he had a plan, she couldn't shake the worry that consumed her every waking moment. Julian had spent years running from his father's shadow, but now it seemed there was no choice but to face him head-on. Olivia knew this wasn't just about his past, it was about their future, the life they hoped to build together. She had never seen Julian this determined, this focused, but there was a part of her that was scared. She had seen glimpses of the man his father had shaped him to be controlled, ruthless, and willing to do anything to keep his position. What if that side of Julian came back when he was faced with his father? What if the man she had come to love wasn't strong enough to break free from the chains of his past? But she refused to let doubt cloud her belief in him. She had already chosen him. And whatever happened next, she would stand by him. As the day of the meeting drew closer, Julian became more withdrawn. He spent hours making calls, arranging details, and making sure everything was in place. Olivia could see the strain on him, the exhaustion in his eyes, but he wouldn't let her help. He kept assuring her that this was something he had to do on his own. But she knew he was scared. Scared of failing. Scared of losing her. The night before the meeting, Julian came to her apartment, and as they sat together, the weight of the situation seemed to settle between them. "I'm ready for this," Julian said, his voice low. "I've been ready for a long time. But I need you to know something, Olivia. No matter what happens tomorrow, I need you to understand that I'm doing this for us. I'm doing this so I can finally be free of him, free of all of it. And so we can have the life we deserve." Olivia looked at him, her heart swelling with love and fear all at once. "You don't have to do this alone," she said softly. "We'll face whatever comes together. You're not alone in this, Julian." He smiled, a rare smile, one that was full of warmth and vulnerability. "I know. And I'm grateful for you. I don't deserve you, but I'm not going to let fear stand in the way of what we have." They kissed then, a soft, lingering kiss that spoke volumes of love, of trust, and of the future they hoped to share. The next day came quickly, and Julian left early, his face a mask of determination. Olivia stayed behind, pacing the apartment, her nerves on edge. She tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting back to him, wondering if he was okay, wondering if he was making the right decision. Hours passed, and Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She called Julian several times, but each call went straight to voicemail. Panic began to rise in her chest. She tried to calm herself, telling herself that he was just busy with the meeting, but she couldn't ignore the feeling that something was off. As the sun began to set, Olivia couldn't sit still any longer. She grabbed her jacket and headed out the door, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to see him. She had to know he was okay. Julian had told her to stay away, to trust him, but she couldn't do that. Not when she felt like this. She drove through the city, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What if his father had pulled him back into his world? What if Julian had done something reckless? What if— She shook her head, trying to banish the dark thoughts. She couldn't let fear control her. She had to trust him. When she reached the address Julian had given her, she parked across the street and sat in the car for a moment, gathering her courage. The building was tall, imposing, with dark windows that seemed to watch her every move. She couldn't see anything through the tinted glass, but she felt the weight of the building's presence, as if it were a fortress, a place where secrets were kept and lives were controlled. Olivia took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. She made her way inside, past the security desk, and to the elevator. Her heart pounded in her chest as the doors closed, carrying her up to the top floor. When the elevator doors opened, Olivia stepped out into a sleek, modern hallway. The air was thick with tension. She could feel it, the quiet hum of power and wealth that filled the space. She walked slowly, her footsteps echoing in the empty hall. At the end of the hallway was a large, heavy door, Julian's father's office. She hesitated for a moment, wondering if she was doing the right thing. But she couldn't stop now. She had to know what was going on. With a deep breath, Olivia pushed open the door. What she saw inside took her completely by surprise. Julian was standing there, facing his father, his expression tense but calm. His father, an imposing figure in a dark suit, was sitting behind a large desk, watching him carefully. But it wasn't the confrontation that shocked Olivia, it was the way Julian was standing, the way he looked. He wasn't the man she had feared would crumble under pressure. He was standing tall, unwavering, ready to face whatever came his way. And in that moment, Olivia realized that he had already won. He had broken free. Julian turned toward her, his eyes softening as he saw her standing there. "Olivia," he said, his voice steady. "I'm done. I'm not going back." His father looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and anger, but Julian didn't flinch. Olivia knew in that moment that their future was in their hands. No matter what happened next, they would face it together. She smiled at him, a smile filled with pride, and stepped toward him, ready to start their new life. Together, the weeks that followed Julian's confrontation with his father were filled with a sense of clarity and purpose. Julian had done what he promised. He had broken free from his past, from the grip of his father's expectations and manipulations. But the road wasn't easy, and the consequences of his defiance were not immediate. Julian's father, a man who had spent years building his empire, did not let go of his son so easily. There were threats, tense phone calls, and occasional meetings in places that felt far too close to the world Julian had tried to escape. But Julian was determined. He wasn't going back to that life, not for anyone. Olivia had stood by him every step of the way, offering him the strength and love he had never known he needed. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about them. Together, they were building something real, something free from the darkness that had defined his past. Olivia had always known she was meant for more than the quiet life she had been leading. She had always dreamed of more, of passion, of connection, of a love that could withstand anything. And with Julian, she had found it. Despite everything, despite the uncertainty and the danger that still loomed, they had found something worth fighting for. Julian's decision to walk away from his family's legacy had left him with little no business, no connections, nothing but the love and trust of the woman standing beside him. But for Julian, it was enough. He had finally taken control of his life, and that was worth more than any fortune or family name. Olivia, too, had found her place beside him, not as a bystander, but as an equal, someone who had been there when it mattered most. As the months passed, Julian and Olivia settled into a new rhythm. They traveled, started new projects together, and slowly, piece by piece, built the life they had always dreamed of. Olivia's graphic design career flourished, and she began collaborating with Julian on various projects, blending her creativity with his business acumen. Their love had become a partnership, one based on trust, understanding, and the kind of deep connection that couldn't be broken by anyone or anything. One evening, as they sat in their cozy apartment, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Julian turned to Olivia, a soft smile playing on his lips. "You were right. he said quietly. I didn't need to hide from my past to move forward. I just needed to face it, and I couldn't have done that without you. Olivia smiled back, her heart swelling with love. And you didn't need to protect me from it. We're in this together, always. Julian's eyes softened as he reached for her hand. I don't deserve you, Olivia, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying to prove that I'm worthy of you. Olivia squeezed his hand, her heart full. You've already proven it, Julian, every single day. In that moment, Olivia realized that love wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about avoiding mistakes or keeping secrets. It was about facing everything together, no matter how hard or painful. Julian's past had shaped him, but it didn't define him, and the future they were building was theirs alone, without the shadows of his family's world hanging over them. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Olivia and Julian continued to grow together, their love only deepening with each passing day. They didn't need anyone's approval, and they didn't need to prove anything to the world. All that mattered was the life they were creating, one filled with love, hope, and endless possibilities. And in the end, that was all that truly mattered. They had faced the storm together, and now they were ready to embrace the calm. Their story was just beginning, and no matter where it took them, they knew they would face it side by side. This touching story follows the emotional journey of Julian and Olivia, a couple bound by love and the weight of the past. Julian, once entrenched in the Mafia world, breaks free from his father's influence to build a future with Olivia. Their love story is one of resilience, trust, and overcoming the darkness that once defined Julian's life. Throughout their journey, Olivia stands by his side, offering unwavering support as Julian confronts the demons of his past. Their relationship becomes a touching story of transformation as they navigate the challenges of love, danger, and redemption. As Julian faces his father and makes life-altering decisions, Olivia remains his rock, proving that love can conquer even the most insurmountable obstacles. In this touching story, Julian learns that breaking free from his family's grip is the only way to have the life he's always wanted. This journey is one of sacrifice, growth, and the power of love, making it a truly touching story that will resonate with anyone who believes in the power of second chances. As the couple moves forward, they learn that love, when shared with the right person, is the key to healing and rebuilding a life free from the shadows. This touching story reminds us that no matter how difficult the road may seem, love and determination will always light the way.